Sup guys, it's Alex here and welcome to the February 21st edition of the Bracketology update. Man, I am excited. There is less than a month until the tournament starts. This is when the first round games would start kicking off. Well, I mean, I guess second round if you want to count the first four or whatever. But this is when the tournament would be kicking off. Man, I am so excited. As you can see, there has been a ton of movement since the last Bracketology that I released on Tuesday. There's a ton of movement up and a ton of movement down. New matchups, new bracket pods or whatever that we need to go through. And I just want to throw this as a disclaimer before everybody gets mad at me for picking all these different teams and stuff. It changes with every single Bracketology based off of the matchup. So last time I put Maryland in the championship game. I don't know what's going to happen this time around. It just depends on all the different bracket matchups. It's all about the positioning. That's what I've been saying from day one. So if I put a team through to the Final Four or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean that even the next Bracketology that I release on Tuesday that they'll even make it to the Sweet 16 or something like that. It's all about matchups. But before I get into this analysis part, I just want to say I will be giving away 2 NCAA tournament tickets if I hit 5,000 subscribers by March 17th, which is the start of the first 4 games. It's 2 days after the release of the bracket or whatever on March 15th. So right now we are at 4,130 subscribers. We are 870 away, but we've been kicking it through. I think whenever I released the original how to enter the NCAA tournament ticket giveaway video last Thursday, we were at 4,040. So we hit almost 100 subscribers in a week, but we need to pick up the pace. We can do it if you want to enter the NCAA tournament ticket giveaway, which you need to. More details on that are in the description below, so make sure you check those out. All you got to do is just DM me or take a screenshot of you being subscribed. Follow me on Instagram at AlexPrice24, as you can see right there. DM me a screenshot of you being subscribed. Tell me what your favorite college basketball team is and the closest NCAA tournament location to you, and there you go, that you're entered. So that's how I need to enter the NCAA tournament ticket giveaway. If I hit 5,000 subscribers by March 17th, I will be giving away 2 NCAA tournament tickets. So make sure you subscribe for those. And I just want to go ahead and give a shout out to Selection Sunday Updates. I have been shouting them out for the last few Bracketologies that I've been doing, but they are a great page. They give updates on all the important games during the college basketball season and give predictions on their own. And they've recently been doing a blind resume prediction, which is actually really cool to see the different comparisons. You'd be surprised by some of the resume these teams had. That sometimes you think that they're a great team, but it ends up being a horrible team or a mid-major. They had no clue had a resume like that. So make sure you check them out. But without further ado, let's go and look at the analysis of the bracket. Up here in the top left regional, I think this one is the South. Yeah, it's the South in Houston. We still have Baylor as the number 1 seed. Man, this weekend's game, I think it's tomorrow, between Baylor and Kansas. It is going to be intense. It's going to be a great atmosphere to see. Hopefully, I'll be able to check it out on ESPN or wherever it is. Either way, I'll probably watch a replay of it. But we have Baylor as the 1 seed. Michigan State is now up to a 5. I had them in the Final Four. My last Bracketology that I did as a 6. We'll see what happens with it this time around. Liberty is new to the field as the 12 seed, as a representative of the Atlantic Sun. Colorado's up to a 4. Iowa's up to a 6. Creighton is up to a 3, Virginia's up to a 10, and then South Dakota State's down to a 12. Then down here in the East Regional in New York, we have San Diego State as the 1. Texas Tech is now down to an 8. Richmond and Indiana are the playing game, as you can see right there. And then we have Vermont down to a 13, Marquette down to a 6. Then East Tennessee State won their game against Furman I think on Wednesday for the automatic bid from the Southern Conference. So now they are the automatic qualifier from there, now up to an 11 seed. Florida State is down to a 3. Arizona State is now up to a 10. Then up here in the Midwest Regional, man, I will be seeing the Elite 8 in this region. It's going to be absolutely insane. As you can see, the 1 seed is Kansas, 2 seed is Duke, 3 seed Kentucky, 4 seed Penn State. I think this could be the best region of the tournament if it was to end like this. I don't know how it would end up doing. And if this did end up being the top 4 seeds, I would definitely have to go to the Sweet 16. I would ask up at work or figure out something to be able to go see those games, to see Kentucky and Duke potentially face off in the Sweet 16. That would be crazy to see. But Radford, as you can see, is up to a 16. The other playing game for the BUbbl teams are NC State and Utah State. Penn State's down to a 4 after losing at home to Illinois. Kentucky's up to a 3 after going on the road and beating LSU. Wright State's down to a 14. Wisconsin's up to a 7. Oklahoma's down to a 10. Then down here in the West Regional, you can see Gonzaga is the number 1 seed. Xavier is up to a 9. Auburn lost again this week. They are now down to a 5. West Virginia is now down to a 4. Akron is new to the field as a 13. Northern Iowa is down to an 11. Then we have New Mexico State down to a 14. BYU down to a 7. Seton Hall up to a 2. And then UC Irvine down to a 15. Then we'll take a look at the BUbbl real quick. Last 4 byes are Arizona State, who just got a huge home win against Oregon last night. Virginia, Cincinnati, which I'm surprised are in the last 4 byes when they ended up losing at home to UCF the other day. USC, and then last 4 in are Indiana, Utah State, Richmond, and NC State. First 4 out are Purdue, who is now 14-13. They are trending in the wrong direction. They have like a win percentage of .533 or .519, and I think the lowest ever that's been put into the tournament as like an at-large seed is .533. So it's not looking good for them, but we'll kind of see what happens with it. Then Mississippi State, Providence, and Georgetown. And then the next 4 out are Stanford, South Carolina, Arkansas, and Alabama. A lot of SEC teams represented in those first 8 teams out. So without any further ado, let's go and get into my predictions with this bracketology. So if you got, I'm trying to figure out a way for you to share this with you guys since Bracketify got shut down. The most common thing I've heard is like a Google sheet, but then I've been doing this like at work and stuff like that, so we just got to figure out what's going to happen with that. But I think Google Sheet might be the way to go. But if you guys find like a bracket site that's interactive, let me know. And 6 minutes into the video, I'll be making my first picks. So let's go ahead and do it. We have Baylor beating the winner of Prairie View A&M and Norfolk State. That one's pretty obvious. Illinois with Ayo Dosunmu, I think is how you pronounce his last name. They will beat Florida to move on to the second round. Michigan State, I think, can hold off against Liberty. Colorado, I know I've been picking against them in my last few bracketologies to get upset in the first round. I will pick them to move forward. They're looking pretty strong. I think they can beat Stephen F. Austin. Then Iowa, I think, will beat USC. They won't struggle too much there. Creighton will beat Hofstra. Michigan went on the road in a tough, rough road environment to Rutgers and ended up beating them on their home floor. I'll go with Michigan there just because they ended up winning. Then we'll go with Dayton over South Dakota State. I know I went with all chalk on this, but stay with me. I'll be picking some upsets later on, and we'll kind of see what happens with it. Then up next, we'll have Baylor beat Illinois, though I could see Illinois pulling off the upset there. Then Michigan State and Colorado, I'm going to go with Michigan State in a 5/4 with Cassius Winston moving on there. Then Iowa and Creighton, I'm going to go with Creighton moving on. I think they've been looking really good in the past few, month. I think they've only lost once in the past month, and that was just like a home clunker to Providence or something like that. They have a really good offense. I think that they can move on there. Then Dayton, I think, will beat Michigan. Then for a spot in the Elite Eight, we have Baylor overcoming Michigan State in a battle of the green teams there. They just have too much depth that Michigan State does not have. Then Creighton and Dayton, I'm going to go with Creighton pulling off the 3/2 upset pick. You guys know how much I love Dayton, but I don't like that matchup there. I think Creighton will be able to overcome them. Dayton is a little bit more than Obi Toppin, but their supporting cast I don't think is quite up to par with Creighton's, and I think Creighton's hot shooting team, and they've been improving on defense recently too. I think that they can get the 3/2 upset there. And then I'm going to go with a huge upset pick right here and put Creighton in the Final Four. I think this game between Baylor and Kansas will kind of confirm whether or not I believe Baylor is legit as a national title contender. I have been putting them as like a national champion in a few of my recent bracketologies, but I'm going to go with Creighton here. They are absolutely on fire, which I mean Baylor is too, but their offense is killing it recently, and you got to go with an upset at some point. Baylor isn't really known as a NCAA tournament like power team, so I think Creighton could pull off the upset here and move on to the Final Four. So then down here in the East Regional, we have San Diego State versus Austin Peay. We're going to go with San Diego State winning that one. Whoops, I almost skipped past that one. And then Texas Tech, I think, will beat St. Mary's. Arizona will lose to Richmond, who I think will beat Indiana, and then subsequently beat Arizona. Then Villanova, I think, will hold off Vermont. Then Marquette will lose to East Tennessee State. You guys know how much I love Marcus Howard and Marquette, but they have not been looking too good recently. They've been relying way too much on free throws and just haven't been able to get the offensive going. And then I think that East Tennessee State is one of the best at-large teams and one of the top 30 teams in the nation, in my opinion. I think they could easily pull off the 11/6 there, kind of like Murray State pulled off the 12/5 last year. Florida State will hold off against Colgate. Then Arizona, I think, can win a 10/7 against Houston. Then Maryland will beat Little Rock. Then for a spot in the Sweet 16, we got San Diego State over Texas Tech. If I can pick San Diego State there we go. Then Villanova, I think, will be able to beat Richmond. Then Florida State, I do think will beat East Tennessee State. That one will be a great matchup to see. East Tennessee State did go on the road and beat LSU earlier in the season, but, I mean, that was in LSU, and LSU's been kind of falling off the map recently. Then Maryland will beat Arizona State, which sets up an Elite Eight matchup between San Diego State, I'm going to go with, over Villanova, and then Florida State losing to Maryland. I'm going to go with Maryland there. Kind of tricked you guys. I thought about going with Florida State, but I just couldn't do it. I know I put Maryland in the Final Four my last video, and they didn't lose this week, so I can't really go against them there. And for a spot in the Final Four, though, I'm going to go with San Diego State. I think this team is getting underrated as a #1 seed. They are undefeated throughout the course of the season, and I know one of the big knocks against them is they haven't been really facing too many tough teams, but they are undefeated for a reason. I think they get they get a Final Four berth right there. So then we'll go up here to the Midwest Regional, where I will be seeing those games, and I'm really excited for that if this ended up being how the Midwest Regional shakes out. Kansas will hold off against Radford. They're going to go with Rhode Island pulling off the slight 9-8 upset over LSU. LSU has just been not doing good. They've been on the decline in the last couple of months. And then Oregon versus the winner of NC State and Utah State. I'm going to go with Oregon there. I know they did end up losing to Arizona State last night, and NC State did get a 20-point home win over Duke. But you got to look at the full season of results, and Oregon's just been a more consistent and better team overall than both NC State and Utah State over the course of the season. Penn State, I think, can hold off against North Texas. Butler, I really want to pick an upset here, 11-6 over Butler, but Cincinnati is just not the team to do so. Then Kentucky will hold off against Wright State. Wisconsin will beat Oklahoma. You guys know how much I don't really like either of those two teams, but I like Wisconsin a little bit better than I like Oklahoma. Then we're going to go with Duke over Montana. Then for a spot in the Sweet 16, we got Kansas over Rhode Island. Then I'm going to go with Penn State. I know they did just lose at home, but then Oregon also lost this past week, so it's a battle of the two teams that just lost. And I think Penn State's been a better team over the course of the season. I think they get the victory there. Then Kentucky, I think, can beat, or almost a Duke. Kentucky will beat Butler. Then Wisconsin and Duke. Man, these three teams right here, Kentucky, Wisconsin, and Duke, were 3 of the 4 representatives from the 2015 NCAA tournament, where my undefeated Kentucky Wildcats lost to Wisconsin in the Final Four. But I think that Duke would be able to beat Wisconsin. And then for a spot in the Elite Eight, we got Kansas over Penn State. I think that one would be a pretty easy victory for Kansas. Then I'm going to go with Kentucky over Duke here. Kentucky's been figuring it out as of late. They have only lost once in the past, I think 8 games, and that was to Auburn on the road, where Auburn had the 44 free throws I'm going to bring up all the time. I think that they can get the victory over Duke, who sometimes just looks like they don't even want to show up to play, kind of like they did against NC State. But then for a spot in the Final Four, I got to go against my Kentucky Wildcats here. Kansas has just been looking way too good recently. They haven't lost since, I think, some point in January. They are looking fantastic. It'll be interesting to see that Baylor game, as I mentioned earlier. Then down here in the bottom right regional, the West Regional, we have Gonzaga beating the winner of Siena and St. Francis. Rutgers, I think, will be able to hold off Xavier there. Then Auburn, as much as I want to pick Yale, pulling off the upset there, they did just lose to, I think, Penn, which is a quad 4 loss. So I can't really go with them over Auburn in this situation. If Auburn can get Isaac Okoro, I think is how you pronounce his last name, back in time for the tournament, I think Auburn can make a run. But if he's not back, they've been losing without him. I think they're a prime suspect for a first-round upset if he is not back. Then West Virginia will be Akron. Ohio State, I think, will be able to hold off Northern Iowa there from a first-round upset. Then Louisville, I think, will be able to beat New Mexico State. It looks like Louisville's starting to turn that ship around. Then BYU, I think, will beat Wichita State. BYU is one of the top shooting teams in the nation. Then Seton Hall will beat UC Irvine. Then for a spot in the Sweet 16, we have Gonzaga over Rutgers. Auburn over West Virginia. The streak of not putting West Virginia in the Sweet 16 continues in this situation. This is assuming Okoro is back in time for that game. Then Louisville, I think, will be able to hold off Ohio State here and move on to the Sweet 16. Then we have Seton Hall and Mouse Powell moving on past BYU. Then for a spot in the Final Four, or in the Elite Eight, almost said Final Four, we have Gonzaga with their only one loss on the season, the Michigan in the battle for Atlantis, when Michigan was one of the hottest teams in the nation. They are moving on to the Elite Eight. Then we have Louisville. I think they are going to beat Seton Hall. And then for a spot in the Final Four, we have Gonzaga beating Louisville. Almost thought about putting Gonzaga in as the 3 seed here, but you got to look at the recent body of work. Louisville lost to both Clemson and Georgia Tech, and then they did destroy Syracuse on Wednesday, but Syracuse isn't close to the tournament at this point. So then this sets up a Final Four of Creighton versus San Diego State, and then Kansas versus Gonzaga. And then for a spot in the national championship game, I'm going to put San Diego State. I thought about putting Creighton in there, but you got to go with one of the teams that hasn't lost a single game this season. I think that people are underrating them. I think that they can get into the national championship game here. If I had picked Baylor to beat Creighton, I probably would have picked Baylor to beat San Diego State as well. But I'm going to go with San Diego State moving on there. Then Kansas and Gonzaga. I'm going to go with Gonzaga moving on here. They've only had one loss this season. And the Fighting Mark Fuse will be able to move on to the national championship game, which is going to be a matchup between 2 mid-majors. I know Gonzaga isn't really considered a mid-major. They're kind of eclipsed that by themselves. And then San Diego State as well, which would be a crazy national championship game to see as a rallying cry for those non-Power 5 conferences. But then for the national championship, I'm going to have Gonzaga become the national champions. As I just think that they're one of the best teams in the nation right now. They only have one loss on the season. That was to a really hot Michigan team. I think they can win the national championship and give Mark Few his first one. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to leave your own predictions and thoughts in the comment section below. Make sure you like and subscribe and enter that NCAA tournament ticket giveaway. And I will see you all later. Thanks for watching.